It's a paradox. The more power Rome gains across the Mediterranean Sea, the more fragile their power is back home. Look at the Senate. In 133 BC, Tiberius Gracchus is beaten to death by senators publicly in the Forum. It's a big question, but we need to know how Rome went from being a republic of laws to an empire of warlords in just 50 years. I'm Mr. Hall, and this is Ancient History. Welcome to Classical Kingdoms, where history reveals truth and wisdom for your journey. We take a classical approach to history, structured, complete, and grounded in what matters. I've been teaching since the 90s, helping students and history buffs and homeschool families understand the death of Tiberius Gracchus is going to show the break in the Roman Republic at a turning point, starting in 133 BC up to 78 BC. We have Marius, we have Sulla, and they are helping prepare the way for Julius Caesar. He is coming. So let's begin. Lesson 47 left pretty good. Like gold is pouring into the Senate house. The wealth is actually undermining the foundation of Roman power, because Rome's military, the strength, is supposed to come from the small citizen farmer. Are you aware of this? Men had to own land to be a part of the military. And maybe it was just 10 to 20 acres. They grow their crops, they raise their families, and when Rome called them to war, they could grab their weapons and fight and march to the battle. Land ownership was their stake. They had skin in the game for this republic. But since the Second Punic War, times were tough. Many had to sell, and rich senators are buying up the land, creating massive plantations called Latifundia. They're not using citizen farmers. They're buying slaves from captured wars. This slave market is huge. Slaves were cheap. And these slave-worked mega farms are cheaper, more efficient, and they're changing the Roman Republic. They've destroyed the small farmer. So it's not just economic. It is also the constitutional crisis, because in Rome, only property owners could serve in the army. No land equals no military service. Without property-owning soldiers, the Republic has a problem to defend itself. The Roman Republic was starving its own defense mechanism of loyal Roman citizens. The Romans had 12 tables. It was like their founding constitution. And they also had the mos Maiorum. The mos Maiorum, the way of the ancestors, the unwritten code. And you don't use maximum legal power to destroy your opponent. The unwritten code was virtuous. You exercise restraint, like Cincinnatus, the dictator, who was only dictator long enough to solve the emergency. Like George Washington, who established an unwritten rule of 2-term presidents. Virtue, prudence, restraint. And this will make you a classical scholar if you think of the benefits to this. The Roman Constitution was a house that's kind of held up by these invisible beams of virtue. Invisible but powerful. And the restraint, that discipline, the strength, the belief, the mos Maiorum is really like a load-bearing wall. That Latin phrase, mos Maiorum, means the way of the ancestors. The Roman Republic has been here for hundreds of years at this point. And it's an important unwritten code, and especially virtuous. To be disciplined, that's making you a good Roman. in 133 BC, we have a situation where the Senate was dealing with reformers. Reformers, because we have this farming problem, and they're smashing into the old ways of the Romans. Now, here's public lands, Ager Publicus, the public lands of Rome, land that's legally owned by the states, conquered from enemies, and is available to Roman citizens, especially if they're helping fight for it. This ancient law from 367 BC limited the possession of land to 500 agura, or that's like 325 acres. So 325 acres. I mean, check where you live, check a map to see how big is 50 acres. It's a lot. So that's plenty of land. It's just a rule that they had, that the rich would not gain too much power given the way the system is. But the reality now, that law is being ignored. The rich are illegally fencing off thousands of acres now because the slave trade makes it possible for them to do it. And this has been going on for decades, actually. The Senate refuses to enforce it. Why? Why would the Senate refuse to enforce a law? They're the ones that are breaking it. Does this sound like anything in today's political climate, today's political world situations? But in this case, the Romans have a major problem with these small farmers and the rich senators that are breaking rules. And reform is coming, but it'll come with a cost, because a man named Tiberius Gracchus, famously the Gracchi brothers. Tiberius was the first brother, and he was a radical, I guess you would call him, someone that wants to enforce the law, enforce the 325 acre limit, because he's saying we have a problem. The inequality is going to be a defense problem for us. And how do we compromise when the Senate is profiting from all this illegal land ownership? Can we go to the people and demand justice? The Senate is the people. The SPQR, the Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and the people of Rome. Well, Tiberius is going to try something going straight to the people, which is like detonating a bomb, a first explosion under the Republic. This is huge. Tiberius proposed a law, the Lex Sempronia Agraria. Lex means law, and that means enforce the 325 acre limit and redistribute some of this excess public land to the landless citizens. The Senate blocks him, stopped him. And the Roman Senate is supposed to be filled with checks and balances. The Roman Republic, like our republic, we have checks and balances. So the way the Senate blocked this initiative, even though it was popular with the people, was they got a different tribune, Marcus Octavius. Tribunes have veto power. Tribunes are sacrosanct. Tribunes are representing the people's, the plebs, the people's assembly, and with veto power and the fact that they're sacrosanct. Remember what sacrosanct means. They cannot be beat up. They can't be threatened or harmed or taunted, and they definitely cannot be killed with clubs and furniture in the Roman Forum. So Marcus Octavius is a tribune that the Roman senators are trying to, make a deal with. Maybe they're taking advantage. So Tiberius Gracchus goes to the plebeian assembly and he warns everyone and convinces them, we've got to kick out Marcus Octavius, kick him out, vote him out. So they did. They deposed a sitting sacrosanct tribune by the popular vote, and that was never done before. One of the old laws, because you're not supposed to mess with these people. They're part of the checks and balance. And you could disagree, you could debate with these tribunes, but you should not remove them. They're sacrosanct. Tiberius has now broke that rule. He bypassed the Senate and he used the mob as muscle. The Senate's response, they saw this happening. Led by the Pontifex Maximus, the senators are led by the highest priest, the Pontifex Maximus. Have you heard of the maximum bridge builder is what I call it. The Pontifex means bridge builder. In fact, that name Pontifex Maximus still applies to the Pope in Rome. You know, the bridge between people and God, the gods. So that's the Senate, that's the elites, and they're coming back at Tiberius Gracchus with the most powerful people in the Republic. Being Pontifex Maximus is one of the top jobs in the Republic because it gives divine power, godly power and approval and sovereignty to the Roman Republic. And this guy is, the Pontifex Maximus is Scipio Nasica. And he's now leading a mob of senators that grabs wooden bench legs, broken furniture, clubs, and they hunt Tiberius down through the Roman Forum and they beat him to death. 300 supporters get caught up in a, civil unrest. They're also killed. They died with Tiberius. The bodies are thrown into the Tiber River. No trials, no legal process. 300 people have died over this issue. And first time in centuries that the citizen blood was shed in Rome. Civil war. It's a time to discuss with my class, what would you compare this to today? 300 people, or in recent history, 300 people that's a huge amount of death over a significant issue. He broke the constitutional norm of the tribune being sacrosanct, and the Senate was afraid of the mob, the unchecked mob. So they responded with murder. And the precedent has now been set. What is that going to mean for the future? If this is the new check and a balance to kill a tribune. From 133 BC, please skip ahead with me 12 years. For the younger brother, the Gracchi brothers come as a set. Gaius Gracchus becomes the tribune in 123 BC. He's actually smarter, even more radical, and even more dangerous. Having seen what we just talked about, you can imagine what the little brother would do. He doesn't want land reform now. He wants to permanently break the Senate's power. Gaius Gracchus floods the assemblies with legislation. Gaius Gracchus transfers the court of corruption from the Senate to the equestrian class. You've heard the word equestrian. They're the horse riders, the cavalry people. And actually, if you could afford a horse, you're rich. Equestrian class is an elite class. And they're now going to manage corruption in the government. Now, the Senate used to manage their own corruption, and you could see that might be a problem. But do you see it's a really sophisticated move, what Gaius Gracchus is doing? He's making a bigger friend with an elite group, the equestrian class. And now they'll be loyal to him. Gaius Gracchus also established the largest subsidized grain distribution system in the ancient world. Subsidized, what is subsidy? That's the government helping pay for part of this, keeping the grain prices low. He's making more friends now, the poor. Gaius Gracchus proposes extending citizenships to Italian allies. More people. Roman citizenship is a big deal. It's a big part of the story. People all over the Mediterranean world may be able to get the legal protection, the political protection as a true Roman citizen. So Gaius Gracchus is trying to make another group of friends. Well, the Senate sees what's happening. Do you see what's happening? The Senate is very worried. So the Senate has to counter, and they use the Senatus Consultium Ultimum. It's martial law. In 121 BC, they institute martial law, which means that the consuls, there's 2 consuls, they are pulled out of the Senate group, and they're able to do martial law. What is martial law? It's like doing whatever you want. That's the interpretation of it. Using, suspending normal law enforcement to do whatever it takes. And that means Consul Lucius Opimius thinks he can kill. He organizes a bunch of archers and infantry to go and invade the Aventine Hill area, one of the 7 hills of Rome where a lot of people live, and they're looking for supporters of Gaius Gracchus. They're looking for Gaius Gracchus. In this hunt, 3,000 Roman citizens are massacred. No trial. Gaius Gracchus is fleeing. He actually commits suicide so that he doesn't get captured. The bodies are being dumped in the Tiber River. They're clogging the waterway. This is huge. Could you think of a time that this is possible in today's world, in the way, power, republic, the way that things should work? Do you like a republic? Click the like button, please. If you haven't subscribed, do that, because we're right in the middle of this Roman Republic coming undone, and there's a solution coming. Is it the one you think is going to happen next? We'll skip ahead to 107 BC. 107 BC, Rome is involved in a brutal war in North Africa. The Numidian king, Jugurtha, it's kind of a problem. Romans don't have enough soldiers, because remember that the property owners were the ones that would be serving in the legions. And the small farmers, we've had this problem with the Latifundia, the estates. This is the whole reason why we were trying to reform things. The Gracchi brothers trying to fix it. So finally, we have someone to maybe complete the job that Tiberius Gracchus started. Gaius Marius. I think we just call him Marius. This is the famous Marius, the military genius, the political outsider. He's a new man. He's not from old aristocracy. He's a self-made soldier. He rose through merit. What is merit? Marius had merit. He was successful and good and performed well. And now he's got a radical solution that, wait to see if it works. He opens up recruitment for headcount. Capite censi, the head count. What does that mean? Anyone who's counted, even poor citizens that are counted, even if you don't own land, you're counted, and you are eligible for military. Men who owned nothing, men constitutionally barred from military service. This changes everything. Before Marius, soldiers fought for the Republic, because they had property in the Republic to defend. And that, it makes a lot, you can see that. But now, after Marius, he needs soldiers to fight, and now he's hiring them himself. They're going to fight for the general, for Marius. And do you know the shift that's coming? Marius saw, really, this is the only hope for economic survival, for military success. The soldiers of Marius will need Marius to negotiate the land grants for their retirement. So their loyalty, not so much to the Senate or to Rome, but it's to Marius. Their loyalty is to the man, to the general who pays them and gives them land. We just learned that they'll be loyal to him. In the cohort system, we're going to make the group stronger. What makes a legion? A legion, if you didn't know, is between 4,000 and 6,000 members. But the subdivision of the legion in the manipular system, we had lots and lots of little groups, lots of standards, mascots, right? Lots of small teams inside. The cohort system makes bigger, more unified teams. And you could probably relate to this if you've played on a team sport. A legion is now going to have 10 cohorts rather than 30 small maniples is what it used to be called. So this means more loyalty. It means more team identity. It's take the sports analogy and apply it to team chemistry. It's going to be stronger and better. And add in something else. Have you seen the Roman eagle? That's actually like a religious mascot, and it's going to be part of their motivation. Marius was leading at this battle where there were some German tribes. This is the Gallic, one of the battles and wars, these Gallic or Celtic tribes, the Battle of Arausio. And they were getting annihilated. The Battle of Arausio, 80,000 Romans were killed. The morale was shattered, and Rome needed more than just a locker room pep talk at this point. And they really needed the sacred mascot. So this Roman standard, it's one symbol for a legion. And this is going to unite people. They're going to be fired up. They're going to believe that the gods are behind it. So before Marius, it could be any number of 5 different animals. The eagle, the wolf, the minotaur, the horse, the wild boar. Do you know which one wins? Marius is going to take one, the eagle. Each standard will have an eagle, and it will unite, and it will be religious. The Aquila, that's the Latin name, the Aquila. Why the eagle? And I know the power, the swiftness, very stately, very noble looking, but most important, it is the emblem of Jupiter, the king of the gods. So the golden Aquila standard, those wings spread out, the lightning bolts, the talons. You've seen the symbol before. And it's not really a mascot the way we think of football team mascots. It's so much more because of that religious component. This now is the soul of the legion. And that helped turn. Marius was able to turn and motivate people even after the significant losses of 80,000 troops. And if you lost this standard, soldiers would rather die before letting their eagle fall into enemy hands. Losing that standard meant you've lost honor, you've lost your identity, you've lost your connection to the gods. It's the ultimate disgrace. So with Marius and the eagle, it's a unifier, and it's making his Roman power so much stronger because it's divine. It's a professional army. The legions of Marius march no longer for the Senate or for Rome. They march for Marius and for his eagle. And another reform comes that the state will provide the equipment, your sword, your shield, your armor. And the units now are more flexible, more uniform, and more deadly. So another innovation, reminds me of the phalanx, and then the way Philip II made a better phalanx, and now the Romans keep improving. But with Marius, and another thing, he calls them Marius's mules. Soldiers are going to carry their own gear. What? That doesn't sound good. 60 pounds of equipment and rations. You got to carry your own stuff. But think what that does to their movement. The army can move faster without the slow, vulnerable baggage trains in the back. And one more detail that I love, Marius has redefined the pilum. What is the pilum? That's the Roman javelin. And he redesigns it. Can't call it a booby trap, but it's like he replaces an iron nail that holds the head to the shaft with a wooden peg, so that when the pilum hits an enemy shield, the peg snaps, the javelin bends, and the enemy can't throw it back. And their shield is useless if it's got a bent javelin stuck in it. So little innovations like this. Marius, he's doing well. So Marius becomes a hero. He was elected consul 7 times. That had not been done before for men in his position. And he's altered the Roman army for the better. And soldiers are now serving him. So go back to the Senate refusing the land. It's how all this started. Have we fully cycled into a solution that is ultimately, well, could it still cause its own set of problems? Will it change and shape the future of Rome? The answer is yes. This is huge. And the story is not over at all. What Marius has done here is going to impact the future. So let's skip ahead to 88 BC. We've got one breaking point here. The lucrative military command that was available for Sulla to go fight the king Mithridates of Pontus in the east. That meant glory, it meant plunder. A lot of money over there in the east. And so the Senate awards Sulla, Lucius Cornelius Sulla, the sitting council. Marius actually wants to do it, but he's a bit older. He's desperate for one more campaign. Marius wants to do it, and he's willing to break every rule. Marius is a populare. That's there's 2 political parties, the populares, the optimates. So Marius makes his friend, the populare tribune, Rufus, help him out. They use armed mobs to pass a law through the plebeian assembly. That's where the plebs, that's where Marius, and it was to strip Sulla of command and give it over to Marius. Let's say you're Sulla. You're an optimate. You're from the other party. You're from the old guard, legally appointed by the Senate. The Senate, not the tribune, the plebs assembly, and a mob just used violence to steal away your command. You're Sulla. What would you do? What would you just accept it? Would you fight back? Sulla fled to where his legions were in southern Italy. And this is the critical moment because these soldiers were Marius-style recruits. What does that mean? What did we just learn? They were from the head count. They were from poor ranks. They were paid by Sulla. They're loyal to Sulla. Is this irony? Do you see what's happening? They're going to do what Sulla wants. Their only hope for wealth is for Sulla to help them win, to plunder the East. And their loyalty was to Sulla, not to Rome. So Sulla asks them one simple question: will you march with me to take back what's rightfully ours? Teamwork. And this, for the first time in Roman history, a general marched a Roman army against Rome. It won't be the last time. I don't want to spoil the story about Julius Caesar, but I hope right now you understand how this came to be. Sulla is using the loyalty of his troops to ignore what the Roman Republic legal system told him to do. So when Sulla arrives and seizes the Forum with his legions, he is able to reclaim his command. And Sulla goes east. He fights Mithridates. Now, Athens is also in the east. This is around the year 87 BC, 86 BC. So while Sulla is in the east, Athens rebelled, allied with Mithridates, don't want the Romans around. Sulla's response was really apocalyptic. He built a massive set of siege towers and earthworks to cut off Athens from the port of Piraeus. Has this ever happened before? The Athenians getting starved when their port is cut off? The citizens were boiling leather from their shoes and eating it to survive. We've said this before. We've told this story. March 1st, 86 BC, Sulla's troops breached the walls of Athens. And what happens? It's a slaughter at a catastrophic level. And it's defiling the ancient world. This is Athens now. It's not like when the Spartans did it to Athens in the Peloponnesian War. This is after the time of Alexander the Great. Sacrilege. This is Athens, where it all started. But Sulla needs the money to pay his troops. He loots some of the most sacred treasures in Greece. He actually goes to Delphi. Oh, we haven't said Delphi in a long time. He goes to Delphi to loot some of the treasures of Delphi. He's not doing what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go to Delphi to understand. Delphi is the center of understanding. He's supposed to go there to understand how can he gain the success and the authority, how can he calm people back home after this fight that we're in. But instead, Sulla just robs the treasures of Delphi. He robs the treasures of Olympia. That's another sanctuary site, not as high as Delphi. Obviously, Delphi is the best. Epidaurus is another site. He plunders. And Sulla had sent his friend Caius up to Delphi to confiscate whatever treasure he could. You know that Caius was terrified. Now, why would he be terrified? Because this is Delphi. This is Apollo. This is the most sacred place in Greece. So he writes a letter to Sulla. He says that while he was trying to do what he was supposed to, he heard Apollo's lyre ringing from the sanctuary. And that's a divine warning. Is it? Sulla wrote back and said, "Take the treasure boldly now. Music is a sign of joy. Apollo is willing and glad to give these treasures to you." And so was stolen even the sacred silver vessels, chopping them to pieces for easier transport. Back in Rome, Marius remained and instituted his own bloody purge of the Optimates. So now we have a real bloodbath, the populares versus the Optimates, and it is civil war. The Romans are killing Romans. By 83 BC, Sulla returned with the plunder, his loyal troops. He fought his way back into Rome in the civil war, and he defeats the troops of Marius. By 82 BC, the last battle, the Colline Gate battle, Sulla became the absolute master of the Roman world by the troops, by winning the civil war. This is a new way to gain power, gaining power with an army. Gaining power with an army is unprecedented, and especially with the civil war. What does this mean for the future? Well, something else Sulla was doing. He instituted the Proscriptions. How it works is he was posting lists of names in the forum for everyone to see, and if your name was on that list, you were declared an enemy of the state. In the Civil War, he won, and if you were a populare with Marius, you have lost your legal rights. Anyone is allowed to kill you without a trial. Your property could be confiscated and auctioned to the supporters of Sulla. Your sons and grandsons are banned from office forever. You're being erased from Roman history. you're being kicked out. Over 2,000 senators and former senators' families and wealthy equestrians were killed in the aftermath of the Civil War. The Forum was decorated with the heads of some of Rome's elites that were on the side of Marius. Is this still the Roman Republic? What has happened here? And why is it happening? It sounds like state-sanctioned murder and not law. There's no due process. Something that even is darker is Crassus. Marcus Crassus exploited this chaos to build the largest private fortune in Rome. Crassus actually bought the confiscated estates of the proscribed enemies of the state for cheap. Crassus becomes one of the richest people in Rome. His wealth was in the thousands of talents. Just for one guy, 7,100 talents. That's tons and tons of gold. Remember, one talent is enough money to pay for an entire warship for a month. Crassus was a true genius, taking advantage. He owned 500 slave architects and builders. 500. That's an entire army of builders. When Crassus saw a building catch fire, Crassus's men would show up to not put out the fire. His enslaved architects and builders would offer the owner a lowball price for a burning building. And if the owner refused, they just watched it burn to the ground. This is Crassus gaining wealth in a crisis. There's kind of a civic disaster coming. I don't know if you feel it. This is the moral collapse of the Republic. There is government here. We can't say that the Republic is gone, but there's human misery becoming an investment opportunity for people like Crassus, and he's not the only one. And Sulla gaining more power because he's got an army that won. Sulla did believe he could fix the Republic. He made himself dictator. How do you make yourself dictator? I thought we had to vote for that. Well, he expanded the Senate, making it a bigger group and filling it with loyalists to him, optimates. He stripped tribunes of legislative power and stripped them of the veto power, and he built all kinds of other strategies and laws. 79 BC, he truly acted and believed that he was saving Rome. But then Sulla quit, and he retired, and he died soon after that. Do you think Sulla helped? Did Marius help? And aren't we leaving off a solution? What do you think is going to happen next? Because we do have a lot more to talk about. Sulla has proven that political opponents could be liquidated, that an army could be the muscle of a general. They'd be loyal to him. And we're not talking about voting people in the Republic. This is what Sulla did. It's what Marius did. And if Sulla could do it, and if Marius could do it, who's going to do it next? Do you know there's a young man named Julius Caesar that's been watching all of this as a teenager? During Sulla's proscriptions in 82 BC, the 18-year-old teenager, Gaius Julius Caesar, Caesar's aunt was actually married to Marius. What does that mean? Caesar was married to Cornelia by then, and that was the daughter of a Marian supporter named Cinna. So Sulla, severing all Marian connections and he just ordered Caesar. The young Caesar had to divorce his wife. That's what you got to do. You don't want to get in trouble with this proscription business and lose your family property and position. Just divorce your wife. What did Caesar say? He's 18 years old. This is mind-blowing to me, to stand up to this guy, Sulla, who is now the most powerful person anyone has imagined. Caesar says no. He is defying Sulla. Caesar was technically stripped of his inheritance. He was already serving in the priesthood, his wife's dowry. He faced a lot of penalties. He actually fled Italy, had to go hide. With connections, Julius Caesar was pardoned, but ancient historians record Sulla's chilling warning to his supporters: beware of that boy. In this Caesar, I see many Mariuses. Sulla saw that in the defiance and the whatever, but Caesar had watched this whole system morph and burn. At a young age, Caesar was smart, he was educated, and he learned from Marius. Caesar was really a populare. He was a supporter of Marius, and he learned from Marius how to command soldiers' loyalty. He learned from the Gracchi brothers how to maximize the mob, the people. He learned from Sulla himself that the constitutional legitimacy means nothing against the cold power of the army and brute force. Caesar learned all of this at a very young age, not even 20 years old yet, similar to Alexander the Great. What happens next? Thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history. And that includes your journey, because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.